All right. Now, over the weekend, the Supreme Court constituted a 12-member task force to decide essentially how oxygen will be allocated all across the country. Let me just give you a bit of a backdrop to this. So oxygen has been in short supply since COVID cases started ramping up, and we've had a litany of cases in various high courts with hospitals actually having to go to court and saying that we're not getting enough oxygen. States have gotten involved with different states pointing fingers at each other and the center saying we're not getting enough oxygen. The central government has also, of course, gotten involved. Now, the Supreme Court took cognizance of all of this and has been hearing out the case and different sides of the story, and as a result of these hearings decided to constitute a 12-member task force to allocate oxygen efficiently and in a scientific manner. It's very interesting because the Supreme Court has effectively had to step into a governance area. This is something ideally the center and states should have been able to sort out by themselves. But now you have a body of people with impeccable credentials, because these are top doctors, top bureaucrats, and pretty much represented from different states who will now be coming together to decide how to allocate oxygen. I have the pleasure of speaking with one of the members of this task force today, who's Dr. Devender Singh Rana, who's the chairperson of Sir Gangaram Hospital as well. Dr. Rana, thank you for speaking with us on the India Development Debate. Pleasure to have you here. Can you tell us first about a bit about this task force and what will be your remit?
Yeah, task force, it will be reinforcing the steps government is already taking. Actually, the government bodies or task forces which have been constituted by central government, they are doing their job, But I think Supreme Court, seeing the oxygen crisis, they thought that not only oxygen but other amenities also, so we are better prepared not only to fight the present wave, but we are prepared for next wave also. So that is the ambient or that is the scope of this committee, that I can only say that already there are a lot of committees from various ministries formed by the central government. They are doing their job, and probably they are our colleagues only. We will be also reinforcing our suggestions and see to it that we are able to, enhance or say ramp up our infrastructure facilities, including oxygen, which is very vital actually out of all things, and plus take appropriate steps to reduce the burden of the disease even in future and the present one also. So with this we had one meeting yesterday conducted by Cabinet Secretary, and it was conducted under the chairmanship of Cabinet Secretary, but it was conducted by Dr. Binod Paul, and over first 1.5 or 2 hours, they enunciated all steps the central government had taken over last 1 year. But Cabinet Secretary, of course, started with his remarks that since the surge of this wave was so huge and so unprecedented, and that they could not imagine the dimension and magnitude of this, and that is why our infrastructure capacity, including oxygen, they were overwhelmed, So now various issues were discussed, what steps they are taking, what remedial measures they have taken during the last 15 years to address the issues, and what measures are being taken in future. And they took suggestions from all of us. We also gave our inputs, and eventually in a day or two they will be forming subcommittees so that various parts of plans can be planned very nicely. That is regarding this task force. I think this will be definitely helping the task forces already existing. Actually, that's what I can say.
No, Dr. Rana, I wanted to ask you because it's a very interesting position that you find yourself in, if I may say so, sir. Because you were one of the hospitals asking for oxygen a couple of weeks ago, and now you have been co-opted in this committee to ensure that everyone gets oxygen. Now that you're on the other side, do you see the challenges? And I would also like to know whether oxygen concerns are being addressed now.
In fact, I was the first to raise this issue 3 weeks back, when we were almost seeing that the danger is there, and our hospital raised the voice, and we raised the voice all over, and we cried over. And I'm very glad that after that, media came into the positive mood, and they, with the help of media, courts, and everything, the both central government, state government, they put their whole machinery into action. And I'm very glad to say here that our own people, a lot of NGOs are working day and night to help the people, help the hospitals. And of course, now we are getting some foreign aids from various countries. And now totally, now central government is fighting on like a war actually. And now question is that how can we oxygen something like the oxygen in the community, where you cannot say that do away with small amount, or you can say that prevent wastage. That is okay, but you have to have production of oxygen which matches the demand. The supply has to be adequate to match the demand. That gap cannot be very big. If the gap is there, then you cannot show that somebody requiring 5 liters and you will try to give him 3 liters of oxygen. So eventually, we have to understand that this is the most essential drug, or say part of treatment of COVID. And here we have to see that we have enough oxygen. We have to first study that what is the total requirement of oxygen, production of oxygen, and what is the total requirement, and what is the likely requirement in future also. So at least 6x or 7x supply, 6 times or 7 times or 8 times supply of normal oxygen we have to ensure. So for that, various government is taking action that they feel that the plants will be able to produce enough oxygen, but I think they will be able to ramp it up by 30%. We have to have individuals, oxygen generating plants at major hospitals.
Dr. Rana, the problem is, no, sir, if I may come in, Dr. Rana, the issue and the challenge is that there is going to be a time lag between ramping up of oxygen, between all of the aid that has come in terms of, oxygen concentrators, etc., being distributed, and patients dying for lack of oxygen. That is continuing right now, and that is the concern. How are you hoping to address that? As a member of this task force, I want to add one more question.
I can't do something
on big cities. It's been on Delhi.
Yeah. As I told you, task force can only ensure equitable distribution. But as I'm stressing time and again, the production has to be it has to be, supply has to match the demand. Oxygen, you cannot have a very huge gap between supply and demand. Then there will be deaths of the patient. So that is what we have to see now, that we have got enough oxygen. Then the next step comes that transportation.
The issue is, so far we've been told that India has, no, scarcity of oxygen. That we have enough oxygen. It's only a problem of geography, that the oxygen is somewhere else and needs to be supplied somewhere else.
I hope it is
Are you
true.
finding that the case now that you're in the task force?
I don't have information so far. Like you, I've also heard that India has enough oxygen. If that is true, then it's fine. Then the issues are logistic of transporting from far-flung areas, and then ultimately ensuring and streamlining the distribution. I hope and I wish the issue is so simple. But I don't think that we have enough production of the oxygen, and that is why we have to develop an oxygen concentrator. Then we have to depend upon the various small plants being installed by private hospital or at government hospital by the governments. So all those parts will be they will be contributing. I really do not know. I cannot answer this question. It is like you. I've also heard that we have more than enough oxygen in the country. If that's the case, then we are transporting after all from foreign countries also, roads also. Then if that can come from such a far-flung areas, then why can't it come from Odisha to this place? So the issue is more than that. That will require addressing, and it will take some time before we know really that what is the quantum of oxygen production in the country, and how can we supplement it with additional sources like this oxygen concentrator, and then also this installing plants, self-generating plants at various hospitals, and at the same time ensuring that oxygen is not misutilized, it is utilized properly, and judicious use, so that we prevent wastage. These are various measures, so this will require actually condensed studies, until we have got larger data.
Sure, Dr. Rana, I need to ask you. Yes. I need to ask you, sir, about a very important point that I was trying to make earlier. All the focus when we talk about lack of oxygen has all this time been on Delhi and what Delhi needs. And that's very important. But what about the rest of the country? What about rural areas? The fact is that we are now getting reports of COVID-19 spreading outside the cities in rural India, in large parts of very large states, where forget about oxygen supply, they're not even getting tested. As a member of this task force, how are you going to ensure, sir, that enough oxygen reaches these places?
Tamanna, that is what I am telling you, that right now, of course, if there is no oxygen, then how can I distribute anything? You must have something in the store, only then you can distribute. So firstly, we have to really study what we have got actually, and what is our demand actually. And once that demand and supply is, we are having full knowledge, only then I can tell that something. Right now we are here only that there is no scarcity of oxygen. This is just question of transportation or ensuring supply chain. So if that is the issue so simple, then probably in 2-3 weeks we should be able to address. But I can say that during last 15 days, putting concerted efforts by everybody, we have addressed this issue to some extent. So today, at least in Delhi, I feel that I can tell about my hospital at least, that at Sarangaram for last 4 days, we are having adequate supply of oxygen. I hope the other hospitals are also having adequate supply. So that means that at least you have mobilized this oxygen to Delhi. But you're right, once we will require oxygen in rural area, where there we require different type of oxygen. At these hospitals in the metropolitan city, you require liquid oxygen. In rural India, you will require cylinders and other gases and those plants. So it will be very important for the government to install those plants, and which will not take less than 3 months for bigger plants, and smaller plants for almost 1 month for installing it. But government is working on war footing. I hope that we succeed. That is what we are. This task force meant, that we see that everything is happening there. So right now I am as ignorant as you are, that I only know that we have enough oxygen, but whether we don't have enough data regarding that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's barely been 1 day on the job, so it will obviously take time for you to have a clearer picture of what's been going on. But thank you so much, Dr. Rana, for coming in and speaking with us. We'd love to touch base once again after a few weeks to know whether the committee now has an action plan. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Tamanna. Thank you.
Thank you. Another important story today, which is related to COVID-19 and its impact on businesses really, is another appeal that's made it to the Supreme Court, asking for a moratorium on loans and a waiver of interest on loans for a period of 6 months. You will remember the same plea had been made last year. In fact, the petitioner is the same as well. And it's come back to the Supreme Court with the reasoning that in the second wave, businesses have gotten hit once more and will need the same kind of respite. Here's my colleague Abhimanyu giving you all the details.
A fresh petition has been filed in the Supreme Court seeking an interest-free loan moratorium period for 6 months, citing the second wave of the COVID pandemic and a spate of lockdowns across the country, which is adding to the economic distress of various people and companies across India. The petitioner, Vishal Tiwari, was also a petitioner in the earlier moratorium case in the Supreme Court, in which on the 23rd of March this year, the top court had directed waiver of compound interest for all loans during the moratorium period, after which banks and financial institutions were asked to exempt EMIs from March to August 2020 from compound interest. The court had questioned Centre's rationale to earlier restrict compound interest relief only to loans up to Rs 2 crores. Also, the court had ruled that a complete waiver of interest on all loans cannot be granted during the moratorium period to protect the interests of bank depositors and financial health of lending institutions. The top court had also allowed RBI and banks to declare bad loan accounts as NPAs while lifting the stay imposed after the end of moratorium period on August 31st last year. It remains to be seen whether the fresh petition will be considered and whether the court is going to pass any further orders based on it, since the court in March this year had held that it will not pass any further orders to Centre and RBI, stating that there is a limited scope of judicial review on economic policy decisions which are best left to the Union government and the RBI to decide based on expert opinion.
All right, time for a very short break, but up ahead on the India development debate, you will hear from the Dr. Fauci, who spoke with the Times Television Network over the weekend and talked about his prescription for India's COVID-19 crisis. Don't miss that interview after this very short break.